Okay.
Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Lucentum Basketball Hub webinars. Today we have another roundtable because we like this series, right? We had it with the sports directors, with coaches, and today we are honored to host three of the most respected NBA scouts: Benas Matkevicius from Boston Celtics, Stefano Lupattelli from the Golden State Warriors, and Rafał from the Denver Nuggets. Each one of them has a unique story, a perspective on discovering, developing international talent and different upbringings. So our goal today is to understand not only what an NBA scout looks for, but how they think, how they evaluate, how they scale and project, how they get that strong intel that makes the difference, and maybe to resolve some of the myths about NBA scouters. So, gentlemen, welcome to the Lucentum Basketball Hub webinars. Thank you for accepting our invitation. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks
Doing
for
good.
having us. Very good so
Yeah,
far.
thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
The pleasure is ours. And yes, we have a record number of people who are attending. They are keep knocking on the door. I will be the good host and let everybody in. Our community has now 37 members from 34 different countries across 5 continents. And we are very grateful for everybody who believe in us from day one, and who are putting their time and their passion to make this project real, and to have an activity like every week. We are trying to come up with something, and these webinars are a part of our story. Let's start with something that maybe is a little bit funny, but since you gentlemen, this NBA scout job is with a lot of mystery around it, and we only know we see some interviews, but rarely. Maybe we all watched the movie Hustle with Adam Sandler. What was your Adam Sandler moment? If now you go back in your checking your career and make also this connection with the movie that I believe that you had the time to watch it during your long flights to USA. Maybe what was your Adam Sandler moment?
Rafal, go ahead with your story. You already gave us a little sprinkle, so finish the job.
Yeah, so not many people know about it, but I actually had an offer to work, with the crew. So already 2 years prior, the movie was even put in motion. My current boss at the time, Tim Connelly, he put me together with the executive producer of the movie. So they sent me the whole script. They asked me to be a scouting consultant to see if the vocabulary, if the jargon is right. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be with them because they were shooting in two destinations at the same time. One was Philly, the other one was in Spain. And if you guys remember, that was around COVID times. You had to be in a bubble. That meant, me missing pretty much the whole summer of the scouting event, just couldn't do it. So I recommended one of our friends, Jason Filippi. So if you watch it closely, you can see his name at the end of it. And then Jason told me he did so well. You can even see in one of the scenes, he was actually there, that he was thinking about giving it a try to the acting career. But I guess he just stick to scouting, and I'm sure that would have been the same for me. And just to answer your question, I guess the only Adam Sandler experience for me was, being lonely at night, eating junk food in my hotel, like Adam Sandler was, because, oftentimes everybody thinks it's such a glamorous, great life. But you go to the game, it's late, everything is closed, and I'm not gonna lie, it happened to me once or twice. You can probably see it. That just ended up eating junk food.
Nice. Jason can't do anything in this world.
I think you compensated that junk food nights with some heavy weightlifting at some moment back in the days. I remember you posting and being very serious about also working out. So you try to compensate, if I'm not mistaken, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure each one of us is gonna tell you on this call that how important it is, your mental well-being, but even more so the physical well-being. We travel so much, we spend so much time up in the air, and I will just hand it over to Benas because he's my go-to guy and expert when it comes to staying healthy and the maintenance of your body as well.
Benas is unbeatable for that. I mean, he's our guru more for that than for scouting.
The boss, the boss.
Here you go.
No, thanks, Rafal, for giving me this assist. But I'm so into health and well-being that my back hurts constantly. So it's there's a little bit of a conundrum there. But my story with the hustle is actually a reverse story because every time I go somewhere and a lot of let's say new sports directors or new GMs or new in that position, they talk to me about like scouting and players, etc. And then when they talk about other scouts, sometimes they call them agents. And I get really, that's like my soft, like my pet peeve, like a wobbly coffee table in a cafe where I lose my shit. I have to change to a different table. This is the same thing when somebody says, "Oh, we got some more agents coming," and from whatever clubs, and I'm like, I every time I have to correct them that agent is one thing and a scout is a different thing, and we don't get a commission. We don't represent the player, which Adam Sandler was actually doing, and he was playing two roles in one. He was representing the player, and he was also discovering him and kind of developing, and so that's like it's a mix of two professions, and I don't think the people that haven't seen the movie, a lot of them don't understand it. There's a like significant difference between what we do and what the agents do. So that's my kind of pet peeve about that movie, but also about those two professions and people mixing it up.
Well, I back off what Benas is saying actually, because I think I mean our job is difficult to explain to people that don't work in basketball, and sometimes they really mix it. And actually, my NBA scout career is too short compared to my two colleagues here to have something to remember. But still, having been an agent for more than 20 years before. I have something similar that happened. It was maybe early 2000 with a player that now has already retired. I don't tell you the name because it wouldn't be fair, but we were just in Lithuania with my colleague and going to watch one game to see one of our clients at that time. And going to the game, I just told him, "Hey, I got the feeling we see one good player tonight." And then all of a sudden we go to this game that has like a Lithuanian league game that shouldn't have any meaning. And, we got in touch with one of the guys that was playing as an opponent of our client. And little by little, he became our client and we represented him for about, I don't know, like 12, 13 years throughout his entire career. I'm still in touch with him. He's more than 40 now. He's retired. But that was something that with my colleague, we were always remembering, like, sometimes we have a feeling that something is happened. Most of the time it's not true. Most of the time that nothing happened. But when it happens, it makes you feel good.
Thank you, Stefano. And let's
Expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
So, Stefano, since you mentioned that your longevity as a scouter is shorter than your colleagues, your peers here, you spent over 20 years as an agent, right, before moving to NBA scouting. How does that experience shape your current evaluations, and how did the transition happen?
Well, I was an agent for more than 20 years. The transition was that I felt like I was no more suitable for the agent job. Maybe it took everything I had inside, and I couldn't do it anymore. It's a very rewarding job, but at the same time, it's very stressing because it's really, really, really 24/7. Especially, you work with people from all over the world, so it's something that if you want to do it in the right way, it takes out a lot of energies. And so, I started to search the scouting job because I was doing something like that also for my agency when I was an agent. And when the opportunity came out through a friend that was working already in the NBA, I just took it. It was the right time for doing it, and I really do not regret it. I like what I'm doing right now. Is still a job that is very demanding. It's not as easy as people think, because when I speak with my friends, they always say, "Oh, it's good. You travel and watch games. That's a dream job. Which in part is true. I mean, like in the big picture, but there is much more than that. And traveling is one thing if you go on vacation. It's another thing if you go somewhere at the end of the world, where nobody speaks English or stuff like that. So, but I mean, as always, as I say to everybody, I never complain about it. I mean, I'm doing what I like, which is a big privilege. And at the same time, I think being an agent for many years helps me still now, to better understand the thought of a player, because I've been around very good players for more than 20 years. I've talked to them. I've taken a lot of precious information from them. I've never been on the floor. I mean, I've never been a pro player, so there are some feelings that you cannot really get. You can get it only from people who have been there, speaking with them, sharing emotions, and even sharing emotion outside of the court. And that is something that now, being let's say a little bit on the other side, because I mean now I'm with a club, so we have players, but at the same time I know how they process their thoughts, how they process the game, how they process their life, what they want, what they really want, what is best for them. And so I think this is a point of view that is helping me very much in understanding even young players now that I'm going to scout. Obviously, it's just a little piece of the entire picture. But besides all the contacts that you have, all the network that you built before becoming an NBA scout through your agent career, I think this is a point of view that I really value, and that helps me quite a lot in understanding a player.
Mm-hmm. Benas, Rafal, you came from the coaching seat, so your transition came from the bench, starting as a coach, and then you discovered this side of scouting, even though scouting maybe was one of your duties as assistant coaches. So, what did you take from those years as a coach, Benas, bringing to your current job right now? And tell us a little bit about your upbringings.
I grew up around basketball from the beginning because my father was a player, and like right from the get-go, when I was like since I can remember, basically I was in the gym, either in the arena watching my dad play, or I was practicing myself, since I was 4 or 5 years old. So that's why my body also hurts probably. But on the other end, I was playing, in Germany in high school, also in the US, in college in the US. And I came back, I kept playing in Germany until my body completely shut down. But then going into coaching early, I think I was 24, 25. So I had to start being an assistant coach and scouting, preparing for opponents. And then obviously you go into scouting tactically, understanding and how players are being used and what are strengths and weaknesses of certain players. So you get specifically into the tendencies of players so that you can prepare your own team of taking away those strengths and playing to their weaknesses. So that gives you an understanding automatically of how players function and how players biomechanically work, what are good things, what are bad things, and you train your eye automatically for certain things to catch your eye. After a while, it becomes automatic. And when I was at CSKA, in the beginning, I was also scouting players to prepare to put the team together for the following years. And at the same time, I started to do the video scouting and scouting reports the same way, just at the higher level, obviously, with the national team, the same thing, doing more coaching, more doing both video scouting and coaching at the same time. and you get the sense of players, what like Stefano said, also what they're at the highest level, what they think about, what kind of things they see. And as all the coaches, high level coaches that haven't played, like Messina, that also hasn't played on a high level, he learns the most from players. That listening to them, what they say, what they feel, what they feel out there, what they see out there. So you have to really be open to that, and those kind of impulses help my job today, because I kind of see when plays develop or what plays are being ran, you kind of learn to anticipate already the actions, and you see what the player is really good at. And also at the same time, you learn to scout coaches, because you learn to prepare and for the opposing coaches, and I think that's an important part or segment of our job, to understand if the coaches are using the players correctly or not correctly. And that way we can have like we can learn of if the player is being utilized the right way in that context, or if he's being underutilized, or if he's being overexposed and he's playing only to their strengths. And in specific systems, you can have a player shine. And if you're not able to recognize that he wouldn't work in any other system, for example, then it's kind of, you can easily fall into a trap also. So scouting teams, scouting coaches, scouting players' strengths and weaknesses helps me today in my job to evaluate the full context and take everything into consideration to understand if the player is making is being used the right way or not used the right way, and what his upside could be in a different context for us, for example. So you can project a little bit better with the background that I got to experience.
Mm. Thank you. Rafał, you were 17, I believe, when you started to collaborate with the Polish Basketball Federation, and also very, very young when you initiated, or you were one of the most important people in the project Euro Hopes. So it was difficult for you to take off the label of being young, and the age matters when it comes to scout talent, and to present your projections, your perspectives, and how this changed during the years. Because now I like to say you are young but with a lot of experience, right? So this is a great combination, but probably it was not that easy when you were 17.
Yeah, I remember one of my first meetings. I flew to Denver, and obviously I was kind of polite and shy and kind of laid back. And then I remember one of our executives told me, like, hey, in States, it doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, if you ever been to the war, you're gonna be a war veteran. And the same is in basketball. So he told me, just, hey, just you have the experience, just go and use it. But not many people know that my passion before coaching was also journalism. So I finished college with a major in sports journalism, and that really helped me to prepare for the job I'm doing right now. Because Stefano, Benas, they can confirm, probably the most time we spend on during the day is writing the reports, organizing our work. So being organized is definitely something I took away from it. How to prepare for the Intel interview, how to write all the information that I was able to gather, how to share all the information with the rest of the front office. So that really helped me at the beginning. Obviously, being young is almost like a stigma, because it's kind of like a cliche, you have to pay your dues. But then I understood, in order to prepare and to legitimate myself, I got to work at the high level, and that's where I started working with the Polish senior national team. And also, like Stefano, it allowed me to kind of relate to the players, see what they think, how they react. And I think a lot of young people ask me, hey, how can I get a scouting job? I think just understanding the team dynamics, understanding high level players is something you really have to have. So that was something really important for me. And then the second thing is just watching a lot of high level basketball, because if you want to scout, evaluate, and most importantly, project young players, you have to know what is the finish line. So like in Benas's case, he was working the EuroLeague level. For me, going to all those Eurobaskets, coaching those teams, being able to be part of the group, that kind of allowed me to understand what is really high level of basketball, and how things can translate, and some of the things are not going to translate.
Great points here. And let's continue, Rafał, and tell us when exactly or how it happened to start to collaborate with with the Denver Nuggets. I read about the great connection you had with Tim Connolly, with Arturas, and but also that you basically showed yourself by being present to so many tournaments, so many youth tournaments during the years, and that was an important first step to come closer to your dream job, right?
Yeah, one thing is who you know, but the other thing is who knows you, right? And that's also very important. And it's, huge part network. I'm sure we're gonna talk about it later, but I think, people in NBA, they hire first and foremost so they can kind of save their time. So that was always kind of my idea. Hey, how can I bring extra value to the table? I will never forget about it because, I was in the process of going to college. That was a dream of mine to be graduate assistant, follow the coaching path, and I was already accepted, to work at St. John's in New York to go there. And in the process of it, I got to know Tim Connelly, and at some point he just calls me out of blue randomly, and he said like, "Hey, it's time to decide. You want to go to college or you want to go pro?" And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he just told me, "Hey, just so you know, I'm about to take over Denver Nuggets. I'm gonna be the GM, and I need somebody." Uh, and he, quite frankly, he didn't know if I was qualified at the time, but he kind of liked the passion, enthusiasm. And the other thing is, I already had some process in place. I was able to show him some of the reports, how I structure my work, how I go about scheduling and whatnot. So again, those people, their time is so precious, their time is of essence. So you have to show them, hey, how can I bring the value? How I go about my process. And I think from early years, just me being organized, having all the lists, having the process, having the sample size of my work, I think that was something important, and that's how I kind of won the job over with Tim and Arturas. And again, they called me. I'll never forget it because I was in Estonia. It was 2013 at FIBA under 20s. So Arturas calls me during the game, and I try to stay away from the phone, even though right now everybody does their notes on the phone. And I was kind of fighting with myself, should I kind of miss the game or not? At that time I was trying to be very serious. So okay, I pick up the phone during the game, which is like cardinal sin. And then it's like, hey, this is Arturas Karnišovas. So I was like, damn, I guess that was worth it. And he tells me, just so you know, if you want to get the interview and be part of the process, uh, the invitation ends tomorrow morning, but I will need you to send some of the sample size of your work, and I need you to answer, few questions for me, just do the presentation. And luckily, I had almost everything prepared. I remember that was in Tallinn. And as you guys know, during the summer, the sun never goes down. So I remember I came back from games, it was 8 p.m. Then I look out of the window. It was already 8 in the morning. Still, the sun is up, but I just finished my presentation, and somehow I was able just to convince those two that I was able and willing to do the job.
And as Tim Duncan was saying, don't get ready to be ready, stay ready. So it's a huge difference. Stefano, there is a person or there is a moment that can change your life forever in terms of your basketball career. There is a person or a moment. What it matters most?
Well, I think in our case, it's more a person than a moment. A moment, I think it's more related to a player, to someone who has a lot of action. For us, I think it's more having having a real network, having a lot of people that you can talk to, and they trust you, and that can, in my case at least, it was what changed my life. As far as the moment is involved, I mean, maybe as an agent it was different because maybe one of our clients being successful in something big time can really position you better. But as a scout, and I think this was already touched by Rafal, I mean, having a wide network is something that is very important, not only for your job but also for your future. As I always say, from my agent career, the thing that I remember and that I bring with me the most is all the connections that I have with players, with GMs, with president, with coaches, with players that have been clients and now they are working for clubs in different positions. And it's not just about getting information; it's about sharing opinions, talking every in a while. It's something that really makes my life full of stuff like that. That makes you feel good. I mean, having the chance. I mean, yesterday I was in Prague and I had the chance to meet one of my former players that I wasn't meeting for a long time, and we have always talked about by WhatsApp, which is now very very popular. But at the same time, you can find someone and see someone that you don't see maybe for 4 or 5 years, and still have the same feeling is something that I think makes your life better. So I think in our job, really, people count more than single moments. And the story that Rafal said is something that tells us, about the connection with Tim Connolly. I mean, Rafal is one of the guys that makes me feel really, really, really old, because I remember him. I remember him at 17 years old, and I was already quite old. And now I'm here and I see him again. So I mean, and he's no more that young. So that means
I'm
that
sorry,
I'm very, very,
Stefano.
very old.
And he
So,
still looks the same. And he still looks the same.
Yeah. No, the
It's
Rafal.
maybe a better
Not your
haircut right
fault.
now. I
It's-
was hoping you would say.
No, it's not your fault. It's something that it happens to me. I remember you coming to me, asking me stuff and stuff like that, like it's normal to do in that position.
Hey,
And
I still have the CSK Moscow Kaukanas t-shirt you gave it to me. I
okay.
was just working out in this the other day. So it always
think
makes me think of you.
think about how much old I am, because I don't even remember that. So I mean, that's something that makes me feel even worse than what I'm feeling right now. But I mean, besides any joke, I think that each of us has maybe a moment, but most importantly, I think one person that they can talk about, and that really changed their life. I had my previous colleague as an agent, that he passed away already, that changed my life, having me working with him for 23 years. And now I have another person that brought me in the NBA world, that actually I have always seen before that, from the outside, and now I'm inside, and I have to be grateful with it for him, for all my life. So I think I would say person over moment.
I think like I can add to that. It's just like almost both at the same time. A lot of times for me, it was both, considering of where I went to meet my boss that I had for 11 years until this summer, was at the under 18s, and sitting in a particular spot that day. He was also there, Austin Ainge. He was back then just starting in Boston, and I was still at CSKA, and I was just scouting an under 18 event that I had no business at being, because CSKA will not sign an 18-year-old Dennis Schroeder, for example, or 17-year-old Abrinas or whatever. So I was just there to kind of scan the market for the future, educating myself and trying to learn as fast as I could. And Austin happened to be that same day at the same spot where I was at, and he introduced himself to me. So people ask me, how do you break into the business? And there's no one way of breaking into it. It's just a bunch of coincidences working together, and at some point it manifests itself. And if you're just doing your job, sometimes the moment becomes the person, or vice versa, the person becomes the moment. And I felt like if I had gone somewhere else that day or sat on the other side of the gym, I wouldn't have met him, probably, most likely. Maybe I would have met him at Eurocamp at some point, because he was frequently there. And maybe in the different circumstance, different context, we would not have talked about it the same way we talked about it that day, because he didn't have anybody to talk to, and he was trying to get connections, and I was the first person that was in his vicinity. So there's coincidences, but that person made that moment important. So it's kind of both, for me at least. I mean, I think it can work in various ways, but like Stefano said, those people at the end matter the most because the longer you do this job, the longer you are in the business, the easier it becomes because the more people you meet, the longer you know them, the more they trust you, the more you trust them, if you learn to trust each other. And the more you trust each other, the easier it is and the quicker you can get to the information that you need. In the beginning, it's always difficult because you have to earn the trust. You have to get to know the people. You have to spend a lot of time. You have to also be humble and always be humble because you like anybody that comes into the job already knowing things and sprays that aura that they already know things, that it's gonna remove you from their surroundings because nobody knows everything, and the more you do this job, the more you know that you don't know. And I feel like that in this job, the more open you are and the more transparent and natural you are, the easier it is to trust you or trust each other. And if you meet the people that you don't know yet and you have a common denominator in a person that both know the same person and they trust each other, then it's easier to make it happen for the future. So I feel like the people are a priority, but a lot of times the context decides on the relationship going forward.
And many of your relationships really went forward because you made your network to be one of your strengths, and you are kind enough to share so much with us by your podcast, inviting some amazing personalities of the world of basketball, and not only the Benas podcast. How you continue to expand your network, because you say, okay, you can learn more, you can travel more, you can meet more people, but it's a process, right? So if you would make some recommendations to give some advice to someone who wants to expand its network, how you are doing that, and how you are connecting then people with each other.
There's different ways of doing it. Obviously, a lot of times the players or the talents, the prospects decide of where you need to expand your network in, and you don't know where they're going to pop up. Like they can pop up in different countries every year, and then you have to either you're already established in that country and you know somebody there, then it makes it easier, or you have to meet people and kind of start fresh. But by then you hopefully have already a name and there's like a little bit of a reference point for the person that you talk to. And a lot of times it happens that I don't know them, but they tell me that they've heard of my podcast, they listen to my podcast. So that kind of helps, that I didn't know it would help. Honestly,
Benas, you are a celebrity right now.
No, no, no.
Basketball celebrity.
No. I didn't, like when that's also sometimes you do things without having like a strict goal. Like my goal is to educate, but then other things come in on the side, like a side effect that actually helps in your job or actually helps in your profession, and people appreciate it. So I'm glad that it's hitting well, and it's not as frequent. It's like quality over quantity, but at the same time it spreads the network across the world. And I would say to going to events and just being present, just being there and not randomly approaching people, but just being there and talking to people, being in groups, and being knowledgeable. Because if you happen to be in a conversation, you will automatically they'll ask you for your opinion. So you have to have also a certain education about players or about the teams, about the coaches, something that really matters. At the same time, that's also investing in yourself, investing in your travels. I went, and we have somebody from Japan, I think, all here also somewhere. But I went to Japan in January on beginning of this year. That I just wanted to meet some people and wanted to watch the games, to educate myself, and that was also from on my own dime. It was not something that the club paid for, or sent me there. I kind of felt like this is something that I need to know, and I want to know, and I want to know more, as much about the culture as the league and the people, and learn, meet each other, to have coffee, to talk about the league itself, talk about players. And I think in person it's more of a sign of trust, that you kind of you feel like, okay, I've met this person before. It's easier than to communicate via phone or just messages or whatever. If you just kind of call somebody or cold write somebody, there's a little bit of a barrier because you haven't met them in person. So I always try as much as possible when I travel, either privately, not with the private jet, but personally on my own expenses, but or on the job. I always try to make a point to also meet people and to talk to people and just kind of, not necessarily about basketball, but just also life, because I think that the more you open up, the more transparent you are and sincerely transparent, not just kind of superficial, but you kind of open up about your life situation, things you struggled with, things you're enjoying right now, hobbies. The more you kind of learn about the other person as well, because they open up also because they see that you're being transparent. And a lot of people are not comfortable with being open and being completely privately themselves. I don't mind. I think that it's a strength that you show some weakness, in that sense. If you show some things you struggle with, I think it ends up being a strength of yours. And if that person respects that, then you will hit it off. If they don't respect it, if they don't like it, then it's probably not the right person to talk to anyway, because they will not engage in the conversation because they see it as weakness, or they don't respect that aspect as much. So probably not the right person for me. So the more I think that you put yourself out there, the more you travel and gotta go out of your way to learn and to meet people and to visit practices, visit offices, just to kind of learn more. And the more it's going to be super helpful in the future. It's a long-term, life is a long-term project. It's a long game you're playing, and it's not necessarily a game. It's more of a lifestyle, the way you want to live, the way you want to project yourself out there, the more it's going to be hopefully understood and not misunderstood, and that's going to help you in the long term.
And same, what I say to the young players, I say to the professionals in basketball who are, don't watch only the highlights. When you check Benas Instagram and you see, travels, or you see Rafal and the Denver Nuggets championship photos, and it's not only about that. And just to get a little bit more in the technical parts of your job, I will pick up a question from our friends from basketnews.com. And by the way, you have here in the chat 50% discount to become a BN Plus member. So enjoy that. I'm doing it every single day. They are amazing in what they are doing, even though they left me alone today with this heavy weight on my shoulders to carry on this roundtable. But still, big love for them. So, what's the most overrated and underrated part of a scouting report? And besides size, what's the first thing you look at when scouting a player? Where does your evaluation start?
Wow, that's a great question.
Basket
I
news level,
remember, of course. I mean, they're professional. They know what they're doing. The first thing I remember, that kind of a bias that I was catching myself doing, that in basketball is so much about the perception if player looks the part, so called. So even before the tip off, before the ball goes up, oftentimes like you just think to yourself, oh wow, this guy, he must be good. He looks the part. So one thing is the physical presence, but for me, it's always how that applies to real basketball skill set, how it applies to real action. And just to answer the question about the scouting report, I think one thing that is really overrated is just writing the strengths and weaknesses and kind of reporting as opposed to projecting. So that was also a mistake I was doing early in my career. I would go back and write the report and, hey, this guy, he penetrated to his left 5 times. It doesn't matter. What we are doing is trying to project a player, how he's gonna translate his game to the right context, to our team. So, okay, can he, dribble to his left with the NBA pressure, with the NBA defense? That's what I'm getting paid for, and that's what I really have to include in my reports. And I feel like also the other part, other than basketball scouting reports, is maybe even more important, especially with every year of experience I'm getting and reflecting on my work and what translates, is the intel report, is the mental makeup. I remember in the past, I would, try to be very specific, maybe even go too deep into the topic. Hey, is his father, paid the speeding ticket? It doesn't really matter, because for me now, the key is the basketball character. One thing is who he is as a person, what he does. And I don't want to be too specific because everybody has, their own secrets, demons, however you want to call it. But at the end of the day, how this person is going to impact the Denver Nuggets, my organization, my locker room, is he going to be fit with the coach? So that really helped me. And again, just going back to the network, I feel like it's going to be a two-way street. I remember when I was an NBA scout at the time, I was working with the Polish national team. I'll have some scouts and they would just try to squeeze me out like a lemon, ask 100 questions and leave nothing in return. I remember that time I made myself a promise. If I'm ever going to be in that situation, it's going to be a two-way street. So I just got back home from Australia. Yesterday, I was there for almost 2 weeks. I always try to look for some sort of like common ground with the person I'm talking about. And again, just trying to help each other, right? Because that's, basketball is such a beautiful thing. It takes us to places that I would have never dreamed of. And, it allows me to get to know the people I would have never got to know if it wasn't for this job. So, one coach recently, he just got a baby born like me. So we just shared some of the techniques, how to get some better sleep. Other guy, he was going through the experience changing import players. So he was asking, hey, what are maybe the better questions I can ask next time around with the intel? So other than just trying to get the information out of him, and that's my primary focus and purpose of doing that trip, I always tell people that, the real friendship starts when we start talking about other topics on basketball, even though like my rule of thumb is the real friends are coming to your birthday party. So this is like business friends, right? And that's something I also learned from the book, which is called, the title is Never Eat Alone. I was given this book by one of my mentors, Rich Shubrooks. And it also, the rule number one was never eat like a meal on the road by yourself. This is probably the best benefit of working as an NBA scout. We have great conditions. We expense most of our meals. So why not to invite somebody? Why not to spend some time with somebody and just breaking bread also breaks the ice. And then we can start talking about different topics. And I think that's also important, to look at those people not only as a source, but also just as a person.
And Jonathan, I wanted to add just about this network thing. I mean, first of all, don't forget that the basketball world and the basketball community is continuously moving, and you have always new people coming in. I think the most important thing in that talking about this is to be able to listen, because I mean, it's easy to go and talk to people that we've been knowing for years and having a good relationship, whatever. But I think the one thing that is a little bit more tricky is to talk to someone that you never talked before, someone that you don't know who he is, or you know just what position he has, but you don't know anything about his background. I think in that case, to be curious and listen is the most important thing, because as Benas said, we meet a lot of people and not all of them might be suitable for a relationship with us, but we cannot decide just by two words or stuff like that. I think it's always important to try to go deep inside the story of the person, what he's done, where he's coming from, and then share some opinions, see what you get back, see what kind of feedback you have. And then I think that's something moving every day, because I mean, you always you have players everywhere, you have teams everywhere, and you have new people coming in all the times. The mistake that sometimes is made, and that I try not to make every time, is to write off people right away. Like, oh no, okay, this guy, well, I don't need him, or stuff like that, which is something that really you don't have to do, because I mean, smart people are everywhere in the world, and we always look for smart people to have to share opinions, learn something more, and share our experiences, knowing that they will be used in the right way. Talking about what the question that Basket News made, I mean, obviously each of us has our different criteria coming from our club, the way they play, and we got some kind of, we look for this, we look for that. Every team plays in its own way, so I mean, that's something that wouldn't have that much. I would suggest everybody that is working for a club think about it. And when you look at the player, to not just make a general evaluation, but see how that player really fits in the team that you are representing at that time, which is that is, I think, a big key, because it's easy to fall in love with a good player, of a player that is playing very well, but maybe he's playing in a system that doesn't even close to what we're doing, and he might be not successful for our system. So I think this is one very important criteria. The one thing that I wanted to point out is that we go and watch youth tournaments and we go and watch senior tournaments, senior games. I think that you have to watch those games and those prospects and those players with a different high, because the young guys, there is a lot of projection, like Rafal said, and you have to see how they're gonna progress. So I think, for example, the physical development is very important when you watch young guys, while at the same time, when you go and watch a pro, I mean, I don't want to say that he is what he is, but I mean, you have to be more sharp on what he's able to do, and if that is replicable in your system and in your league. And that is different from considering, like, hey, this guy is 16, he will be in the NBA draft no more than 3 years from now, so what can he become? Instead of watching a 25 years old guy that is not in his prime yet, but is a defined player, and you know exactly if he's a good fit for what your team is doing, or if he's good enough to play in the NBA, because we are scouting players for the NBA. Maybe he's a great EuroLeague player, but he doesn't fit the NBA style or the way some players are used in the NBA. So I think the context is very, 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 very important. We don't have to just think about players in general, but we have always to be consistent in what we're looking for.
Okay, I can add on to that, because my favorite topic here, as you know, Yunus, is
communication.
Okay, all right. You've very loyal listener there, and that's one thing that's the keyword listening is what both of you said. That when we're talking to people, there's nothing worse than somebody that's hearing you but it's not listening. He's just kind of waiting for you to finish, and he's just saying something that he wanted to say. So there's no real conversation happening. So you want to avoid something that's just kind of A to A communication. You want to go A to B to C to D. You want to go and expand on what he said. That automatically is going to form a relationship and form a topic that you can connect on in a month. It's not about there's a lot of people out there that are eager to let you know that they know. Like there's a lot of conversations happening that they're not hearing what you say. They just kind of want to let you know that their knowledge and their information is something valuable to you. But at the end of the day, maybe you as a person who is trying to project the knowledge to him is not going to be suiting for your relationship going forward. So you want to have an open conversation, listening and expand on what the other person said and have a fluent conversation that way. Talking about context, the context, as both of you also mentioned, for example, just to have without having like a big hoorah here, Hugo, for example, is the most recent example for us that he was used to playing in a smaller role for Real Madrid next to superstars. Coming to the NBA, being physically ready to play, it makes it an easier plug and play kind of action for him to find himself playing without the ball, playing next to superstars, and implementing his game and his physicality the way he does right now. So that's one thing that you kind of have to look for. And what gets from the question that Basket News asked, what gets overvalued or undervalued is a lot of times the skill set that a lot of players have. And you find in Europe a lot of guys who can score, a lot of American guards who can score, and they're just really good players for that team or for that level, for that league maybe even, and stand out because they are so effective scoring the ball and are just really dominating the ball, but they're not good enough to do the same thing at the next level, at the highest level, and dominate the ball and take the ball away from the NBA stars. It's gonna, bring along a lot of more problems, and maybe they have all the deficiencies that's going to show on a defensive end, not necessarily the offensive end. So you can't neglect the defensive part and defense versatility of how many positions they can guard actually. Also, so a lot of times guys get caught up with the offensive hoorah talent and skill set, and then they don't really look at the defensive versatility that the player brings or doesn't bring to the table, and it's going to become a picking point every time down the floor at the NBA level. And the last thing that I wanted to say also was something that is hard to bring or hard to explain. Maybe it comes with the experience after doing it for a long time. Maybe it comes from the experience of having been a player, not at the high level, but having played, having practiced a lot, having played, competed at a higher level, but not. It's more of a just kind of term scouting feel. Like it's just kind of your experience of looking at the eye test, and maybe you see him doing all the right things technically, warm up and being focused and showing that he's focused. And maybe after a while, you'll be able to pick up that this player is actually projecting what you want to see. He's actually playing to your catering to your scouting knowledge, and he's just checking the boxes, knowing that you're watching, and he's just basically faking of what you're trying to see. And the longer you do it early on, it will be hard to pick up on because you see that he's kind of, oh, he looks like a professional. He does the warm up, he does this, and then on the floor he's really focused. But then there's moments that you look. That's the advantage of live scouting. When you look him in the eye, you follow him, you see what he's doing, what he's not doing, and you see his reactions to certain things that are happening on the court. Whether he looks at the bench or looks at the crowd, or he's kind of certain things that are he's kind of leaking. In MMA, this kind of is called leaks in terms of what you're showing your opponent that you're actually vulnerable at. And some of those players are doing it at the same time, but you have to be more aware than they are because sometimes they do it without being aware that they're doing it, and you have to catch those moments to kind of, okay, he's a fraud, or he's maybe good, but he's not as good as people think, and those kind of things you have to pick up on, especially in live scouting. It's easier to do than it is in video. That's why you travel to kind of pick up on those little things that you can't see on video when you watch, jumping, driving, impact at the rim. You can see, you can feel maybe better live, but you can see it on tape, obviously. But those things I think are undervalued in regards to that player's ability to leak certain things towards the scout watching, because they know all the prospects are aware that somebody's watching, and a lot of them are not really doing what they're supposed to do.
Gentlemen, these are amazing takes, and thank you. It's a great luxury to have you here with us today. Nowadays, there is a lot of data, a lot of analytics, a lot of artificial intelligence tools, implemented to support the front office in their decisions. I want to ask you, how do you balance all this data analytics with the instinct of the true scouter when making the final recommendation?
I mean, I'm not a huge analytics person, but you will have to adjust to that because it's very prevalent. But every office has the specialist on that, and just as much as they're, doing the eye test as well, we also have to do the data test to a certain degree. But in our office, we have a clear separation of who's a specialist and what. So sometimes just kind of if you have a feel for a certain statistic, whether it's offensive rebounding percentage or like the crash rate that you're trying to see, certain things of the 3-point attempts per 100, or like it's certain things that you kind of feel like is this real or not real? You're trying to confirm or not confirm, but it's in my eyes, in my job, it's not a huge factor just because we have somebody in the office who has main job to really put it against each other, and then everybody else that is above us, they try to put it into context and see what's real, what's not real. But we always have a constant fight between a good fight, between the data analysts and the scouts to see who has which feel is the right feel. And sometimes it matches, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I think I got to know the analytics when I started to work as an NBA scout. Before I was not that much into it, I'll be honest, and I was very late because the analytics were already very advanced at the time. And I think it's a very, very, very useful tool, like is a very, very useful tool, the eye test. I don't like people being orthodox on that, to be, as I say, the Taliban, like it must be that way or it must be the other way. I'm not against analytics. I don't think that analytics always say the truth, but I find it as a eye-opening on some particular skills of the players. So I think it's a huge part of NBA scouting right now, and it's becoming big over here in Europe as well recently. But I think the eye test is important. But I mean, I find myself talking with our analytics specialists in San Francisco, and when I go there, and I have to be honest, they are on point with a lot of stuff. Even if sometimes they're not basketball people, sometimes there are guys that are coming from another world and they just use numbers to get to conclusions, which is something that I don't like personally. Okay, but I think it's very useful. It's very useful to have because it gives you another point of view. It gives you items to discuss and to find the right assessment of the player. So I think video scouting will never substitute live scouting. Just to see one of the questions that were made to the public. At the same time, to say I don't believe analytics is something I don't know how to call it, but it's like you don't want to watch. Okay, so I mean, you have to watch it. Then you have to see how these analytics are built, what is valued. You can fight some of the criteria that your analytics guys are using. Try to explain is difficult because some of them, they don't come from basketball. So sometimes it's difficult. The language is different. But I'll be honest. I mean, I was totally against analytics before becoming an NBA scout. Now I realize that is a very, 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 very useful tool for our job. And I have to say, I have to give them hats off because sometimes they are able to put together assessment that may be my eyes and maybe it's just myself, but weren't able to put together.
The great thing,
yeah, I mean, it's yeah.
One more thing. The great thing about it is this unbiased. It's something that's raw, and the data analysts, they have to watch, and just as much they have to watch the game outside of the statistics, we also have to watch the statistics outside the game. So it's kind of merging and crossing, but that the numbers are unbiased, where we can be biased sometimes, and then that's when we have to really make sure that we take everything into consideration. Sorry, Rafal.
No, for sure. It's all great points. And I like to say that, the numbers, they kind of paint a picture, but it's going to be your eyes that are going to, watch it and kind of digest it and draw conclusions out of it. So I think, especially in this day and age, the analytics and numbers are an essential part of the game. Like Benas said, they're very unbiased, but I think at the end of the day, as a scout, you try to focus on your rules. And we always say you let someone else to worry about the exceptions. I think that's exactly when the numbers come in play, because they can help you to flag certain exceptions. So the way I go about my scouting, I like to use analytics. I like to talk to my numbers guys, especially about maybe some guys from lower leagues, some guys who are hard to evaluate, some guys with weird background, or maybe some guys who stand out analytically, because, my process personally is that I always use the numbers not to maybe formulate the final opinion, but to raise certain questions.
You can't be, there's no absolutes either. It cannot be like always and never, you know. There's always like a gray area in between. Always, I said it, but there's like a gray area in between that you have to be considering both, and it's never going to be one completely and the other not. So always there's a fine balance between the two.
Yeah, you just ask, I saw somebody send me the article the other day that, which are the professions that are most likely to be replaced with ChatGPT, and luckily the NBA scout was almost at the very bottom of it. It was like 0.00001. So, and I can see the shift, even with the Nuggets, we got the subscription to ChatGPT, and obviously some guys try to use it and to see if they can do the same job as we can. I think, with the technology and the ongoing process, there is a time and place to integrate all of it. Like, the old school scouts would say, you only have to go watch live. Now it kind of shifted, you can be more efficient watching the video. Obviously, you don't want to, over scout and watch every single clip, but I think the tools are there to help us. So I go the same way about using the technology, even, if it's AI, chat GPT, maybe to organize your notes, maybe do the research for you, maybe to help you ask certain questions, whatever that is. Like I remember I saw it somewhere was the same, like with every new technology was coming to place, there's always this stage of questioning and then acceptance, and you can either adapt, or die. You don't want to be late to the party. So I think, especially with us competing in NBA, which is such a hostile environment and such a competitive environment, the goal is one, to win the NBA championship, but there's basically 30 ways to go about it. I think it's a beauty of our profession. You go to our, war room. That's where we prepare for the draft and use the diversity of the people in the room. I remember I was the youngest one in the room, 21 years old, and next to me was Herb Livesey, who was 87 at that time, right? And we have people like Stefano said from Wall Street, numbers guys, people from outside basketball. I think that's really the beauty, that there is, like Benas said, no one absolute.
I want to go in that draft room at one moment, and you guys to take us and open the doors of Boston Celtics, Denver Nuggets, and Golden State front offices, and that room where the amazing happens. But Rafal, you mentioned something that also I have a quote from you. You said when you are on time with a player, you are already late. So you already touched some of the intangibles of the adaptability criteria. Ben has mentioned about Hugo. How do you anticipate talent ahead of others, and also how do you measure the IQ and adaptability, speaking about international players?
Yeah. So right now, it's not even a problem, the access to information, but I think our job more so than ever is to filter the information and provide the information in that digestible way to our bosses, right? I mean, probably the next Yanis is never going to happen again, because now the eyeballs are on every single player with the technology at our disposal. You can watch everybody from in front of your computer. So maybe 20 years ago, the network was even more essential because you could hear about the player first, and that would give you a competitive advantage. Now is even more so about the filtering information. It's really important for us. I think, you want to see the player if he plays the right way, if he's all about the right things. With the feel, for me, it's very important when we can finally sit down with the player, and we really can't, until it's late in the process. I remember, for example, after we drafted Juancho Hernan Gomez, I came up to him to introduce myself, and he said, like, hey, you don't even have to do it, because you spoke to my mom and you spoke to my first coach and to my ex-teammates, 20 plus people. I spoke about, just to get a good grasp who he is, what his personality is. And I think you have to really paint the picture. But again, our job is really to filter that information, to provide it, and to send it to our bosses.
Stefano?
Well, I mean, in today's basketball, I think is very, 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 I don't want to say impossible, but very, very, very difficult to be very much ahead of everybody. I think the one thing that is very crucial is to anticipate how that player really adapt to your system and to your team. And it can be and it can be a player going directly to your NBA team, or it can be a guy that goes through the G League system and then moves up to the NBA team. In order to do that, I think you have to stick with your criteria, the criteria that you got from your club regarding what we are looking for in such player. And obviously, I always used to say that, to find Giannis rather than Joker, rather than Luka, rather than Wemby, I mean, normally it wouldn't be that difficult, even if in the case of Jokic, it went well far away in the second round, but it shouldn't be. And the one thing that is very particular of these four guys who are internationals who have been and are going to be very successful at the NBA level, like being MVPs, or maybe in the case of Victor, maybe future MVPs, is that they are basically aliens. You see that they have physical specimen that are not, they're not common to anybody. Giannis, Wemby is very easy to realize that. But even, Jokic being, let's say, fat, and Luka being able to play almost stationary and being able to do whatever he does. I mean, in those cases, this is something that you can see right away. You can see that there is something totally different from the other players, and you can go for it. For all the others, and we're talking about maybe starters or guys that are, very, very, very useful for a good NBA team, I think you need to really, really, really deep dive in what they do on the floor that can be coming useful to your team, to the way your team plays. Your team plays fast, your team plays controlled, your team value a lot three-point shooting, your team wants to play with two bigs. This is something that, and Benas said it perfectly. There are a lot of players who are able to score, a lot of players who are super EuroLeague stars that maybe never even made it to the NBA. So I think that you don't have to be, fall in love with players. You just have to look for the qualities that you are really looking for. And that's the only way. And then, it doesn't work 100%, because sometimes there is the mental part, there is other qualities, other things happening around. Obviously, there must be a level of athleticism that allows players to be effective at the NBA level. But then, maybe it's the basketball IQ, maybe it's the passing, maybe it's the shooting, maybe it's something else. But you need to stick with what your team needs, because not all the players are good for everything.
I think everybody said basically everything, but just to add on that, like, there's also such thing as over scouting. Like, there's also such thing as over interpreting. It's like, oh, did you see this hesitation that he did? Did you see him, looking the defender off and doing, like, okay, that maybe that's a one-off. Maybe it's something like that's in that moment it happened, but a lot of times you can over interpret things and put too much weight on something that he did that one game or a couple of games, and maybe that at the end it doesn't matter. And like Rafal said, the intel in a different context, because vice versa, we also help European teams with some intel that we have gathered over the years, and it's not always right. It's the context that matters of the player that he's around in that team. Maybe he's acting completely different with this coach in this context, and he's going to be a really good person, kid, teammate in this context. And So you have to like gather intel from different contexts, different people and different situations, so you can kind of have emerging information and find the golden middle. Like there's a spectrum of information that you collect, and it can vary. And I think at the like if there's mostly negative or mostly positive, you can get an idea. If most of the time guys are in the middle. There's like maybe they did something bad off the court one time, and then some teams put a whole bunch of weight on this one time that he did something bad, and then he goes to that team and he's a golden child, and then it's like, oh, why didn't we bring him? We made a mistake. Yeah, because like you put too much weight, over scouted in a sense, over scouted the intel, and put too much weight on one thing. It's never going to be perfect. None of us are perfect. Just like teachers, scouts, players, nobody's perfect. So you have to find like the golden middle that can work in your team's context. And then you have to decide if the juice is worth the squeeze, if the talent level outweighs the negative part. If he has some more negative intel and he's not that talented, you cannot deal with it probably at the end of the day. So you have to make sure that his talent will outweigh the negative parts of his personality that could infringe your chemistry. Doesn't have to, but it could. So there's always like weighing off the pros and the cons, and at some point there's some risk involved that you have to take, but it's not ever going to be perfect. That you have to make sure that you collect it from different parts and different contexts, so you can merge it together, and then put yourself in his shoes, put yourself in the sports director's shoes, put yourself in the coach's shoes, and then evaluate the whole bag of information, because there's always going to be a mixed bag. And then factor in maybe the expectation factor, what was expected from that player versus what he delivered. And maybe here there's just the person you talk to just had such a big hate on that person, on that player, because he underperformed, but it's a very biased opinion. So you have to make sure you talk to somebody else who doesn't have a biased opinion, heard other things. So there's always, you have to make sure that you gather the right amount and you get a good feel that you can actually feel good about vouching for that player or not vouching for the player in regards to information. And that's when, full circle, that's when the network comes into play, that you have trust amongst each other, and you kind of, you feel out, and you kind of put maybe more weight on this one source versus the other source. So taking all that also into consideration.
Yeah, just to piggyback on it real quick, if I can. I feel like, for international scouts, the most important thing is to be able to evaluate guys over a period of time. So it's like a scale of time. And if you go and see somebody just once, I remember like one of my colleagues from the US, we went together to see Porzingis, and he goes like, oh, wow, this guy is so skinny, he won't be able to play in NBA. And I tell him, hey, buddy, like if you saw him a year ago, he was skinny back then, he just gained 15 pounds. Or even the same was with Jokic in my case. You go there once, and after the practice he can do 10 push-ups. You come back, 2 months later he can do 50. So it's almost like with a weight loss, the people who are the closest to you, you're never gonna lose 20 kilos over a night. So it's a gradual process, and your wife is maybe not gonna see it, but then you didn't see a friend of yours for 6 months, and then, oh wow, you lose so much weight. So it's almost the same with players improving. So basically, how you want to go about it is like you want to see one play, it translates to a complete quarter, then it translates to one good game, and then it translates to longer stretches, and then hopefully into whole season. And that's why over scouting is also too important to keep in mind, and is a huge bias that impacts all of us, because it's a human nature that the more you watch somebody, the more fixed you become on his weaknesses. So I think it's a very overrated aspect of the game, trying to focus too much on what player cannot do. Is always our coach tells me, hey, tell me what he can do. Why do I bring him on the floor, right? That's why one of the essential parts of the scouting report is so-called NBA skill, elite skill, if you will, or even NBA role. We don't even go that much about his position, but what he brings to our team, to the dynamics and on the floor. Is he energy guy? Is he rebounder? Is he finisher? Obviously, it's important to know what are his limitations, but I think a lot of stuff, you get it wrong if you just focus too much and over scout and you focus on the weaknesses.
I totally subscribe what they both said, about I mean, one of the things that we have to have clear in our mind is that really there is no perfect player. If we look for a perfect player, and can be for the NBA, but can be for any other team, yeah, man, you never sign anybody, because if you start a conversation with, hey, but he cannot do this, but he cannot do that, but I mean, you don't sign anybody. I mean, it's nobody. Each of us has his own deficiencies. The very good thing is to minimize the risk. I mean, and understanding that if you're looking for a shooting big and he's not a good rebounder, but the guy is shooting 40% from three-pointer, okay, someone else will get the rebound, but at least he will spread up the floor. Or if you look for someone who can help you defensively, maybe, okay, he's not a great shooter, okay, someone else will shoot, he will cut, and he will go to score next to the rim, and he will try not to mix the spacing of the team. But on the other side, I will have someone that is able to stop the star of the other team. I mean, don't look for someone that check every boxes, because otherwise you will be found yourself without any play.
And maybe
Gentlemen,
without a job.
Gentlemen, you are not representing the regular European basketball clubs. You are representing NBA franchises. So I'm curious to know who is setting the KPIs, the standards that your work during a year should be aligned to. In Europe, we all know, can be the president who likes this type of player, or can be a coach with 1 year contract who decides that this year my team is going to play like this and I need these players. But I believe that in the NBA case, it's a little bit different. So um, your work starts by setting some standards and having some criteria, right? When is this happening, and who is involved in this process? Who is later on who later on will influence your work?
I think, I mean, I think it can be said that it's the whole culture that you have to apply yourself to. It's the team's culture, team's context. If the person that you draft or that you bring in as a free agent, if you bring him into our building, how does it feel when he's in the context of our team? Like, how does our team feel about him? How is he in the locker room? How is this the presence that we want to bring somebody in our culture? Because our culture has to be strong enough and dominant enough in regards to what we're trying to portray as a club. What kind of philosophy, what kind of ethical culture are we setting? What kind of ethical standard are we setting, that we can bring people in our building and have them absorb that culture. You can't just bring somebody in that's not going to be coherent with what we're trying to do and how we're behaving, and that starts at the top. So that's why in our building, Brad Stevens sets the standard of how things are done, and Joe Mazzulla sets the standard of how things are done on the court. And we both are synergetic with each other because they have the same mindset, the same approach, and that's how you want to build your team. Also, you want to have players who are going and following the same mindset and the same attitude, and are willing, as well as for us to do the job off the court, to grind off the court, as well as on the court for the players. And that's what the culture that we have at the club sets the tone for what we're trying to do and who we're bringing into our gym. And sometimes it is that you feel like maybe this player is not ready yet, but at least he has the right mindset, that you can train him and he can get to the level that we're seeing him being at, like Rafal said, projecting him to be in 2-3 years time. So I think that the culture, the team's culture, the team's value system plays a big part in who you're trying to bring into our building, and how he's going to fit the whole context of our team, because he's going to wear the Boston Celtics logo on his chest, and he has to represent the team the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think NBA is unique in a lot of ways, but especially that you basically have two separated entities, which is the front office and the coaching staff. And one of the ex GMs I used to work for, he would say, let the coaches worry how to win the next game, and let me worry how to win the championship next season. So we almost operate on two different timetables, even though at some point both parts need to be integrated. But I think it's also very important to say, because I can imagine a lot of people on this call are more so interested in being scouts. I remember, the GM telling me, you guys as scouts, you always look for the upside, what is attractive, for what is sexy. I have to do what is right for the team. So I think that's why I like to go back for every training camp to the Nuggets to see how we play, what is the depth chart, what are the coaches saying, what they're looking for, what are the rules, how we play, what is our playbook, which players, players they have a chance maybe take a leap. What are our needs? What are financial situation and whatnot. And again, you have to have like a North Star that is gonna steer you where you wanna go, and usually that's GM's jobs. And I remember in our case, the year we won a championship, in the summertime, we were talking, because of Jokic, you have to defend in a very specific way. We want to have a physical, strong, big backcourt, and then boom, we draft Bones Highland. It's like a kind of a trap you can fall for, that you go away from your rules because there is something sexy, attractive. So we bring this guy to the table, we add him to the equation, super, offensively gifted guy. He gains more and more playing time because shooting is such premium. He becomes fans' favorite, but it kind of undermines our chemistry and how we want to play. So I will never forget at that time, my GM Calvin Booth, he made a very bold move because that wasn't really seen like a good move at that time. He almost just gave up on a guy. He knew, it's like we call it, addition by subtraction. You kind of remove somebody out of the equation, and then all the pieces they fall into place. So by moving this guy somewhere else, all of a sudden now we play different lineups. We go back to the way we want to play the defense, and next thing you know, we win NBA championship. So I'm not saying that was all Bones Highland's fault, but I think it's very important to keep in mind and making every single move. That's why with the Nuggets, we always ask, we have a core of players, the franchise player, the starting five, how this new player is going to impact what we have.
As for my experience, Jonut, the guidelines come from, let's say, one level above us, guys, coaching staff and front office and top front office group get together pretty often talking about that. And we have meetings in person every year before the season. We got instructions. We remember everything that we normally do, what kind of guidelines we have. And they, obviously, these are front office meetings, but obviously everything is said is communicated with the coaching staff, because then we have to have players that are coachable and that our coaches like. So it's a combination of a couple of things, and I think it's the right way to do it, in the sense that it makes no sense to pick players in the draft or sign free agents that in the end don't fit. First of all, for culture, like Benas said, because there have been cases all over the NBA of players not fitting culture of clubs that are strong in that. And secondly, they don't fit with the kind of basketball that they like to play, or with the role sometimes that we want to give him. So I think every year we get a refresh of that, and then during the year with our meetings and our talk with our American colleagues, we refresh everything in time by time. But this is the way we do it, and so far it's been pretty successful. So I came into the system was already working pretty well, I would say. I came just after their fourth championship in about 10 years, so obviously you had to adjust it a little bit, as players are changing, and you have budget constraints because of the second apron, first apron, but at the same time the system was pretty good, and we keep doing like that.
Because we don't have so much time, I want to touch this the draft night experience for an NBA scout. Benas, could you take us a little bit through the process, open the door for us, and explain to our audience how the things are going in that night, when basically you are ready to make the final call?
I mean, like people, I think, underestimate the work that you do before the draft night. Like draft night is just kind of also already everything is set, and you're just enjoying the experience to an extent. Like the GMs and the president obviously make the phone calls because trades come available as you're approaching your pick, and you always have to be ready with the list that you have, with the rankings that you have made leading up to the draft. So everything is prepared and discussed through ahead of time, so you don't have to scramble and discuss and talk it out at the time of the draft or at the time of the call that you have to make or that you receive for a trade. So you do all the work for all the year, mostly towards the end of the season of the college, because that's where all the intel starts for the college scouts in April most of the time, May when the draft workouts start, and the combine. You have a whole bunch of events that you try to finish all the job that you've done by May, June, and take everything else into consideration where you have to compare, or we have to compare the international prospects to the college prospects and have our ranking set by the time draft comes. On draft night, we already talked everything through. We talked through all the options that we may have, our GMs and the people that are designated to make the phone calls. They have their teams allocated that they have to keep a tab on of what can be available, what kind of trades could be made, and that's happening as we approach our pick most of the time. Until then, it's kind of quiet because if you don't have the top 5 pick, top 10 pick, you kind of wait and see what falls into your lap, what kind of trades are being made, and what comes available. And then on the call or before the call, you kind of have to make a call, whether it's a decision or a phone call, to kind of have the opinion you've made substantially being firm with what you've decided beforehand. Because a lot of times at the time when you're picking, or at the time where you have to decide, your gut comes into play, and the decision, the rankings you've made without the pressure on it is kind of different. And then all of a sudden the pressure comes on, or the pressure that your pick is getting closer and the players are getting constructed, and sometimes the guy that you have ranked a little bit lower is still available, or that you ranked a little bit higher is still available, and you have to make a decision. Is that, like, am I wrong? Am I, like, is my gut feeling maybe right? Am I maybe overvaluing, undervaluing somebody here? So you have to be firm with the opinions that you've formed throughout the year, and you've watched it the most, so you have to bank on your feel, bank on the opinion and the references that you have for the rankings that you did, and sticking with it, because that's something that in the heat of the moment you can easily switch your opinion and start flip-flopping, because you could feel that you're wrong about what you're thinking, because of what happened, what other teams did. So you have to really put everything into context and trust the work that you've done, basically.
Thank you, Benas. I want to touch another important point because we are already 1 hour and a half and we don't have too much time. But I will try to blend a few questions from our audience and to address an important topic. How do you see the future for European clubs that focus on developing young players? Can they resist the pressure of everything that NCAA and prep school also offer to the young players? Will they be able to keep attracting the elite talents and keep them in the club through the whole development path? This came from Matko Jovanovic from Cedevita, but actually, we received lots of questions for you dedicated to this important topic, very present in nowadays. So, how do you see it?
I think that you have to be cognizant that you most likely will not be able to keep that prospect throughout this development path. Most likely, if he stays and you've done all the steps for him to stay, great, you've succeeded. But you have to have a security system plugged into the contract that if he doesn't stay, what happens? What compensation do you get for investing? And you can't get mad at the player leaving or deciding to go to college, because the paycheck is 10 times bigger than what the European team can pay. And I would probably send my son also to college if that would be the situation, just because it's life-changing money, plus the experience, plus the English language, plus the education, plus full arenas, and you get playing time. So you have to expect the players to kind of leave but obviously recruiting them as they're with you already, because colleges have to do the same thing. Colleges have to recruit the players they're coaching right now for them not to transfer the next year. So it's all about recruiting as you are already having their control, with the being cognizant and having the situation in mind that they probably could leave and will leave because it's more attractive to go. Still having a security system implemented for you to get compensated for what you did, and for the fact that they're going to come back at some point, most likely also if they don't make the NBA, that they look at you like a home and don't look at you as one of the many teams that they could go to, but somebody that they're familiar with, they trust you, they love your culture, and you also maybe have already secured their rights to have first matching rights for that player as they come back into Europe. Because now we're starting to get the first circle of players coming back after college, coming back to Europe, and seeing where they go was going to be very important to follow and see what kind of mistakes were made, or what the learning process is from the players that come back from college back to Europe, if they come back to their own clubs, if there's a security system for them plugged in, for them to have for the clubs to have the first right to the players, or if they don't even want to go back to the same club because that club was not treating them the right way. So you have to, when you bring him, recruit him already for the future, and have everything, all the security systems plugged in.
I believe that we are in a changing moment. It's whenever there is a new rule, a new system, a new everything, there are always things going in a very, very, very strange way. I remember in the early 2000s when there was craziness by the NBA clubs about picking in the draft European kids. It happened the Milicic thing, it happened the Skitishvili thing. So it's always something that you will remember in the past, in the future, that, this college took this guy and gave him so much money, and now this guy is driving a bus for someone else instead of playing basketball. So we cannot judge what is happening now. For now, we can just adjust, as Benas said. I mean, we can try to, the European clubs needs to work on what they have available, try to get some kind of compensation when the players goes, knowing that the wide majority of the players will come back, because not all these guys will play in the NBA. Some will play in the G League, but they are coming back to play. And if you treat them well, I think your possibility to get them back to be the first choice once you come back is always higher than just trying to avoid them to go or to keep them. You cannot stop them. So it's a nonsense to try to stop. Just see for now like someone else developing them for when they come back and play for you, and keep working with the younger guys that you have. Try to develop them the best. If they're very good, they're gonna go to good colleges, and you will get your compensation for that. But trying to keep them here, I mean, if they want, and it's their choice. I mean, there are guys that they don't like to go to school, and so they don't want to go to college because they don't like to go to school. Good, okay, keep them. But right now, the difference in what money this kid can make, it makes no sense for them to stay. I mean, it's easy to talk with the money of someone else, but if it happens to us that someone tells, why, you come here, you play college, you enjoy, you are the hero of the campus, you have everybody liking you, shaking your hands and stuff like that, plus we give you $300,000. What do I have here? We're here, you don't know if you play, you are in a second division in Italy, you practice every day, but then you play maybe 2-3 minutes, and plus we give you peanuts. I mean, each of us would do that. So, I mean, it makes no sense to fight against that. It makes a lot of sense to adjust to that and try to get the maximum out of it with all these things that Ben has said, and trying to be ready for when they come back. Because when they come back, that's going to be, and they will soon come back, because the college system is just 4 years. And when they come back, that will be the tough part, especially for coaches, to motivate them to play maybe for smaller amounts while they have played for bigger amounts in college. That might be one problem that people are underestimating. But I think it's something that we are gonna see happen, especially at the beginning of this new system.
Excellent. I have 3 questions, and I will need you to give me very sharp answers. Yes, in one sentence. So we start with Rafal. What differentiates prospects who succeed in the NBA from those who don't?
I would say the feel for the game and being able to have a strong identity as a basketball player. I think a lot of times we draft guys based on upside and potential, but there is not much substance. That's something that Benas was talking about. So I feel like if you as a basketball player have a strong identity and you don't even play for 2 weeks and then you get called upon and you know exactly what you gotta do on the floor, to gain more minutes, more trust, I think it helps the player, but also the coach. So just having something to lean on, I think is very important.
Benas?
Mindset. I think it's a lot about mindset. All the most talented players get drafted. There's here and there, just maybe there's like a huge mistake that has nothing to do with NBA, but most of them are talented or have skilled enough to play. But a lot of times they're not ready to come and be ready to play in a G League, out of the G League to play in the NBA, to take the long route and to have the grit and the perseverance and the mindset to go through hardship and go through the grind to make it, because most of them have to go through it and most of them are not, a lot of them are not capable of having that mindset.
Stefano?
Love for the game and ability to grind and to surpass every kind of adversity you have in your life. I mean, when life is too easy, the NBA always propose a lot of hurdles in your career, and you have to be able to go over it or maybe around it, but you have to go to be able to go. So I think that if you really love the game, if you really are passionate for that, even if your skills are not super, and obviously there must be a skill base, obviously, but I think that's something that can make a difference.
Grazie. What excites you most about the next generation of European players, Rafał?
For me, we live in a day and age that the player is not even defined by the position he plays, but more so about the skill set. So for me, seeing those hybrid players that you can have a season that, Russell Westbrook, technically a point guard, is the best rebounder of NBA, or you have Jokic, who's, center, a big, in more, traditional positional slot, and he's the best, assist man of NBA. I think that really excites me because it allows you from the team building standpoint to be very creative. Those guys, they have a skill set that is beyond their physical abilities, and seeing those guys with the individual, technique being as developed as it really excites me because there's so many different ways, and that's why winning players, they always come in different shapes and forms. And again, just going outside the traditional box and being able to project those players, that really intrigues me.
Benas?
I'm excited not knowing what will excite me, because have to be open to not knowing what will be the next generation after that, and I'm open to, for somebody, one of them, to excite me about something, and just the fact of not knowing of what will excite me about those future players.
I like the way new kids adjust to new basketball. I mean, it's amazing the way you go and watch these tournaments, these youth tournaments, and you see, I would say, year by year, different stuff, different way of playing. They watch a lot of videos on their phone. They try to replicate stuff. I mean, kids are never, year by year, are never the same. And I like the fact that they always try to adjust. Then obviously they need to be guided, but until they're young, they're open-minded, that they like to do whatever they can do in order to be effective on the floor right now.
Okay, the last one. If you had to summarize your scouting philosophy in one sentence or in 3 words, however you like, what would it be?
I would just copy the Patriots way, which is tough, smart, dependable. I like to have players that are tough, especially in NBA and in professional basketball. You gotta play so much through the pain and resistance. You gotta be smart, to adapt to different ways and different situations. And the best skill is being available. So just being dependable, and just creating that luck for you.
Benas?
For me personally, like I said, I like to be open to all sorts of players in all shapes and forms, like Rafal said. I like toughness, mental as well as physical, and I like for them to have fun on the floor. Seeing players that are loving the game, like Stefano said, and having fun, and not just always just grind is one thing, but you have to have fun as you grind and you win, and you look at the crowd and you sincerely enjoying the passionate experience of playing basketball, whether there is a crowd or there's no crowd. This one player is probably going to play the same way when there's two fans on the floor in the stands, or 18,000. And I think that those players that are having fun, they can translate to a successful winning basketball level.
For my philosophy, I think the thing that I would say is be deep, never stop on the surface. I mean, sometimes we get content with what we see at first, and we forget that there is much more under the surface. I think that's the thing that I try to do every time I try to evaluate a player.
Gentlemen, it was a masterclass. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
having
your time. To our audience, follow these amazing guys on their Instagram, on their LinkedIn. Listen to the Benas podcast. See you next year at the B8 Summit. And also become BN Plus members. Go on basketnews.com /plus. Use the Lucentum 50 code, and you have 50% off for the first month of the subscription. Thank you once again. It was Lucentum Basketball Hub Webinars Roundtable with the NBA Scouts. It was a privilege. I cannot thank you enough. But
Thank
kudos.
you very much.
And
Thank you so much.
see you next time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having
Thank
us,
you.
Jon. It was a pleasure.
Good luck with everything. Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.